I have very few people who have replied today, and I'm gonna have to go onto YouTube and I'm gonna have to find the actual link. Oh, there it is right there. Look at that. That was easy. All right, let's do this. Sorry about this, guys. A little bit rusty today, but I'll send the link over here. And I'm not sure if anyone's even going to show up. So this could just be me hanging out, puffing bowls, and talking with everybody. It's been a while since I did a spur of the moment hash church. Of course, our last hash church was in honor of Horatio Delbert, our hash church alumni who passed away recently. So we want to send our regards to his family and all the friends and all the people that he sort of supported over the years and inspired and blew away with all of his knowledge. I am going. And now we're back. I was frozen for a little bit. Sorry about that, everybody. Let's see. Oh yeah. So let's say hi to the room. We got we got Happy Guy. We got Kello NOG. We got Squishy, Manitoba Goat, Medically Fit. Bingo Lombardi's in the chat holding it down. We got Dirty 42 and K2 LED and Justin Cash. We got about 120 people watching right now. And I got people in the room that I'm going to let in right now. I got Hemp Guy, I got Collin, and I got someone I don't even recognize, but let's see who it is. What's going on, boys?
Hey, buddy.
How you doing?
Good, man. I'm literally
in the world.
Maine.
Oh!
Let me see if my headset will connect here.
Cutting out a little bit.
That's not working.
You there, Hemp Guy?
Fix
Your microphone. I heard you there. I can hear you.
Everything's rock and roll.
And then we got this other one here. I don't know who that is. Oh, it's Mike. What's going on, buddy?
Morning, Marcus.
You there, Hemp Guy? Dude, I got to be honest. I was like, who the heck is that? Dig on MOEQA. How did you get your name to be such a crazy name?
Probably firewall.
Weird.
Nice.
What's up, Mike?
Weird.
Hey, Sam. You guys doing?
Howdy.
Oh, I'm on the coast of Maine right now.
Nice. Just chilling out?
See why my headphones should be working. I'm just, I came up here. My wife wanted to come up. We live so close to Maine that we've never had a chance to really explore it, and we've been keep talking about it. So it's an hour and a half from us. So I committed to it, and then I got your email, and of course, it's hard to back out of the commitment when you've committed to it.
Dude, the last time I was in Maine was in 1994, and I drove all the way to Bangor to see Fish play at like a high school gymnasium.
Hell yeah. Dude, I remember that. Well, I remember the Bangor Maine Festival, and that was an incredible run of music for them. I mean,
yeah, for sure. They did the 37-minute long tweezer from a live one at that show that I was at. That was like the first time, I guess. Maybe not the first time, but it was one of the longest ones they did. And I guess it was a special enough one that they felt they were going to put it on their live double album titled A Live One. Here, let me put you on view so we can see that, Collin.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome, Johnny B with the long hair.
I'm gonna mute myself, and I'm going to figure out how to put my earpods there.
Dude, you rocking those pros?
I am, and they're giving me so much trouble these days, actually. They're not connecting to my phone right. I don't know why.
Ooh,
it's weird.
Yeah, that's no bueno.
This is some cold cure lemon cake.
Beautiful. You went on mute there. I just went and pressed some hash church last night.
Ooh, how is that?
Dude, it's actually really quite nice.
It looked insane. The photos were beautiful.
I definitely didn't get the yield that I was expecting, but I'm going to do some more. So it was just really a small press on my my Helix Pro here on the side of my desk. So it was the crank unit, not the most amount of pressure. Hello, good morning, Etienne.
Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Oh, pretty good. I got a message yesterday from Ian Davidson, and I've been trying to get him onto Hash Church for a long time to come and share all of his incredible knowledge on not only like growing in greenhouses, but also like starting the tissue culture company and kind of getting into the explanation of initiation and multiplication and meristemic micropropagation. Basically everything I learned about tissue culture, like 95% of it has come from Ian, and probably 5% of it came from Chimera, because he was talking about it almost 20 years ago, way before anyone was, I guess, really able to make it economically viable as a business. I know SkunkMan Sam as well had done it 25 plus years ago. So it would have been good to have him on. He's impossible to get on the weekends because he's got a little girl that he spends his time with, his daughter. But he said last night he was going to try and make it in. So I'm really hoping today he's going to be able to come in and share with us some good stuff on tissue culture. But otherwise, we can chill out and puff some bowls.
We'll do that regardless. Yeah, I knew a group in Central California who did that a decade ago, but
wow.
They had brought in a woman from South Africa who had did it in South Africa for 27 years. And just after she did it, she's like, okay, I'm going to retire now. Goodbye.
Oh, wow.
So they couldn't continue it. They basically had it started and they had to let it die because they couldn't perpetuate it.
Yeah.
So with
Collin.
tissue culture, do you guys like, all right, so there's a lot of people offering it. I get emails all the time. There's a couple people in the state of Massachusetts. My earpiece fell out. Sorry. That are, the main theme that I keep being told is it will replace your mother room. Now, is that something that everyone feels like the techniques and the, I guess the SOPs that you would follow are that solid that we would not have to keep live plants any longer? Or would you say that we would want to keep maybe both at the same time? What are your thoughts on that kind of stuff?
As somebody who's worked with tissue culture, I can say that when you reproduce meristems under tissue culture, so in a glass container with agar-agar or whatever your formula for nutrients, one of the problems is every few years you really need to take the plants out and refresh them by growing them as a big plant and taking fresh new pieces. So, I mean, it definitely takes up less room. But if you're big enough, it may make economic sense. But Ian at Segra is the man to talk to about this. And yeah, anybody who's interested.
Can't wait.
I hope he shows up. I'm really. Go ahead, Etienne.
It's an interesting discussion because it was perpetuated in a lab. So I always thought about that. What would you do? Would you maintain the genetic, but as well as keep it perpetually going?
Yes.
My thought would always keep some sort of backup data always. I mean, I have that problem with a computer. So
exactly.
The only thing I would think of to do would be to maintain that same situation with genes, because if electricity goes out and then the chamber that's stored in dies, now what? You start collecting genetics from other people.
I think one of the great ways. I think one of the great ways is maintaining it under like very small pieces of it, just the tissue. It doesn't even have to be the living plant, and you can maintain that on in liquid nitrogen in a very small, inexpensive method. And I think that way you can really get into redundancies where you could have 2 or 3 different sites where you maintain your library, and it takes up a very, very small amount of room versus how much room it would take for you to keep those mothers. But I'm in the same boat. I don't think it's gotten quite to the point yet. And it's also when we compare it to strawberries or raspberries, they don't seem to have the same variation when it comes to commercial production. You've got your one banana, and your Driscoll's does like your one strawberry. And it's this one sort of cultivar that everyone's just kind of like, oh, I'm happy, I'll just buy the Driscoll strawberries. I think they grew 10 billion plantlets this year all over the world in different parts of the world. So from those companies' perspectives, obviously it's going to be a lot easier to keep a plant that's one single genetic. We come from the cannabis industry where, on average, I'm sure we're going to want to have at least 500 plus genetics kept alive. Maybe it's 1,000, maybe it's 1,500. I don't know, but there's a lot of different varieties of cannabis out there, little variations in phenotypes, and, losing those from a cannabis connoisseur perspective is frightening. You want to maintain all those flavors and all those different effects. And when you think of the nostalgia that occurs in an old school puffer, when they're like, oh yeah, we used to get this one thing. And I mean, I've asked Sam how many times people have asked him about the roadkill skunk. Oh, whatever happened to the roadkill skunk? Like, we have nostalgia over these different flavors, and it's
roadkill skunk actually got ran over on the road and doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I'm feeling you on that one.
Well, you said you heard it here first, folks.
It's perma
it's one of doing this work originally 30 years ago was exactly to keep it maintained. So I had 600 clones at that time, and keeping them all alive and maintained was a pain in the butt. So I wanted a method where I could take meristems or callus, freeze it, and keep it the way you're talking about in liquid nitrogen. Then, like you could have 1,000 in a small portable unit. It doesn't even have to be liquid nitrogen, because you can get freezers that are -50 really easy. And I think that'll do it.
Yeah, to Marcus' point, it's frightening to lose some of these varieties. I mean, it's, the security that I always had was to give it to your closest buddies and make sure that, if anything were to happen, you could at least call upon them. But it's, we're so far from that now. The paradigm's really shifted. 1,800 square feet of moms, you're not going to be sharing 1,800 square feet of cuts. It's tough.
What I was going to say was, I'm sure many more varieties than exist now have been lost in the past.
Right.
Think about it.
Yeah, got some good news.
That's a good point. It's a good way to put it.
I like good news.
So I got word from Ebony Worsley, who is Sean Worsley, who is the veteran arrested in Alabama for traveling through with cannabis. And our group, the Veterans Action Council, actually sent a letter to Alabama full of a whole bunch of people who have served, saying, let him out, let him go. And Ebony let us know that Alabama is going to be releasing him on parole. So we got some positive news there. And on the same side, we got some bad news. Friend of mine at the Veterans Virtual Happy Hour, Jose Balin, and them were vying for a reschedule, and they applied to the Supreme Court of the United States and got all the way through to there. And then this week, the Supreme Court decided not to hear the case. So unfortunately, the rescheduling that we vied for, unfortunately, again, it was on hypotheticals where the court wants to see you actually be damaged or hurt by the proceedings somewhere along the lines, and they just threw it out. So we got to try again.
Yeah, you got to try again and wait till after the Democrats win and pack the Supreme Court. Then use it with facts instead of theory, and you'll do it.
Right, and that's what we're trying to use. We've assembled the veterans from across the United States, and we're going to use our power to, go after Biden, to work on a Beau Biden medical marijuana bill, and and because his son, as even he spoke of, could even have used it. So we're going to not stop. We're going to embarrass them. We're going to use our power and our voices to continue the pressure. So, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, take it on the chin, regroup, reorganize, and fight again. But Mr. Worsley's going home. So, that at least some good news. A drug war prisoner is going home. And
Dude, when the fuck does anyone ever get let out of prison in like Louisiana?
it's Alabama too. It's Alabama. So yeah, it was a
Let alone Alabama.
in case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard finding him counsel. There's a lot of challenges there because there's no medical defense, and he had been busted in Alabama prior and was let go to Arizona to do his parole, and he got busted on parole there, which is why he went back to Alabama. So that he was even to get parole due to this is pretty much a miracle in itself, and one we're thankful for. And hopefully our pressure helped. If not, doesn't matter. We're going to continue to use whatever voices we have to help people who are still hurt. So, don't forget, if you're free, send the elevator back down. Help out people, brothers and sisters are still in jail for this. So
Sharing is caring, which reminds me to give a big shout out to one of my mentors, Ron Hickey, my good old buddy Ron, who recently sent me 2 beautiful 5-foot tall Congolese plants. And I guess it's full circle because 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, I don't know whenever I started really giving the Congo away, he was one of the first people I actually gave it to. It was kind of a controlled cultivar for a while. Some people felt like they were going to keep this cultivar and really control this cultivar and make seeds and sell it and make the money. And I kind of put the kibosh on that by giving it away to everyone, literally, like Dr. Atomic and Remo and Johnny B.
I gave it to everybody.
I gave it to everyone, man. I gave that thing out to everyone. And so now it's come back to me, John. Yesterday, 2 5-foot tall Congo plants, beautiful Congo plants that Ron was growing out on his deck, arrived. And so I got the Congo back, and I'm pretty darn happy to have the Congo back. And on that note, I would like to welcome Mr. Regenerative Joshua to the room with the orange toque. Good to see you, buddy.
What's up, man? The toque.
Dude, that's Canadian for you.
Yeah. What's up, Collin? Are you on top of a rock somewhere?
What's up, brother? Yeah, I'm actually in Maine right now. I drove up here with my my better half, as I say.
Nice.
We're just exploring the coast here. It's beautiful. But sorry if I feel towering today.
It looks awesome, man.
I'll try to, there we go. How are you, Josh? What's going on, man?
I'm good, man. I just heard you guys talking about the Congo, and I got that cut a couple years back when we went up there to do the Regen conference in Vancouver. It trickled its way down, and I've been pollinating with it. I've got a few rounds of pollination on it, and it's a cool plant, man. The Roberts Creek one, I guess, is the one we're probably all talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I call it Le Mano Negra cut because It was my friend Alex who actually collected it from the pygmies in the Congo. Then it went to Reefer Man, and Reefer Man, I think, ended up taking it to the Sunshine Coast, and then people on the Sunshine Coast got control of it, and then you had your Green Supreme and your Al the Alchemist, and befriended Le Mano Negra's wife, Reina Ginga, and started trying to control this plant that just needed to be shared. It needed to be gifted. It needed to be given to people because it is a really unique cultivar. It has a nice, I've heard it has THCV in it, is actually what I've heard. I've never actually seen the COA from the Congo. Wouldn't be surprised if some of that South African found its way out.
Here you go. This was tested by Tim through Kind Selections. I have the Congo here right now, and this is what it has on the bottom, tested by
THCVA. There you go.
And this is right now, guys. Like as you're saying it, I got gifted this the other day when I was at Horatio's actually. And
who do you think gave that to Tim?
Oh, you did.
Along with the East Coast Sour Diesel. You bet, man.
Even though,
it's good to give these things away.
Oh, it smells so amazing. And on that note, I'm doing a dab of the Congo.
Let's hit the Congo, buddy.
That's what I'm smoking a joint of this entire time, which I'm like, y'all like Congo. And my friend Amber has a company called the Congo Club, which
Amber Senator.
Yeah, Amber Senator. She's awesome. And she Yeah. She does the Congo Club. So she does. She's actually going to be doing a concentrate infused, where she's taking kief and actually infusing the Congolese joint with the Congo kief. So we're stacking Congo here, Callie.
What's
Dude,
the
I love
Congolese
her
terpene profile
Congo.
like, guys? I've had the terpenes, I believe, from the Blue River terpenes, Marcus, of the Congo, but I've not smoked the flower or hash from it. What's the profile?
It's very
on it?
exotic. It's very terpenoline. It's very like perfumey. It's just something different than what you constantly get with the gases and the fruits and all these different sort of musky flavors. The Congo is definitely a special one. It's I got a big bag of it right now. Actually, I'm pretty excited to start squishing it. I squished the hash church last night and made a little bit of rosin, but I think today, maybe even during church, I might press out a little Congo with my little bit of nug that I got left.
How much of that hash church did you press, and how much came out?
I pressed a very small amount, and I didn't get a ton, but I pressed it on my Helix Pro, and I didn't have it sort of tied to my table with these. You need a really proper table, because when you crank the last little bit where you go from about 8,000 pounds up to like 14,000 pounds, you really need it to be steady. So I couldn't really get it much over 10,000, and it was low. I mean, I put in 4 grams and I got out like 0.5. So it was about like 12%. But then I did hit it a second time, and I actually didn't collect the rosin from the second press. So I'm guessing it's probably around like 18%. He said he got around 20 to 22% when he pressed rosin. It makes me a little suspicious as to how it can be so resinous. Maybe it is these hooked trichomes. I'm going to get in on the bud later today and photograph it. It really reminds me of an old cultivar I used to grow years back, like I'm talking almost 30 years ago, from Holland, that I got, called Dutch Treat. And I've never seen another Dutch Treat that looked like this one. It was just coated in resin. It had a really musky kind of like almost hash plant smell. So for me, I've got a little nostalgia on it. I love the way the plant looks, and I'm still going to wash it, see how much the melt comes out, what kind of yields I get. And I'm pretty excited about it, actually. It's pretty nice.
I wanted to say, I wanted to hop in back on the Congo before we moved on. I was just on the phone with Vision Creator last week, talking about the Congo, and he and I can't remember his partner's name, but they're working with the university up there in BC, and they've done an S1 line of it that they are just about to release. They have 1,500 seeds, I think, of S1s they're going to release on that. So just maybe give a follow out to Vision Creator if you guys are interested in getting a hold of those genetics. He's
usually in the chat.
Yeah, he's been really cool. I mean, he's the one that was getting it out to all of us, you know, that it trickled out to in my kind of circle here. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. You know, it's one of those cuts, especially now where legality isn't really a problem. I generally just, if I have it, I give it to whoever asks me for it. I can't imagine being like, you know, one of the guys that likes to control this cultivar, and I won't call him out because it just makes him sound like such a piece of shit, but he was kind of like, you know, I got to make sure that, you know, the person is worthy. And I'm like, whoa, like, dude, like that is everything that's wrong in the world right now. Like the person is worthy. Like, what if the person isn't worthy, but his little girl is worthy and is having seizures and needs this cultivar to stop those seizures? Like, why do we create these reasons to be greedy and to maintain control over something as awesome as a cannabis cultivar? It's like, listen, I get it. If you spent 20 years or 10 years in your greenhouse and you collected the seeds, I get that. But this is a cultivar that was collected in Africa. It was meant to be given out as a gift. You know, the pygmies meant it to be a gift. And it just seems like a strange thing to try and collect and control someone else's work. Just give that shit away.
I had a variety from the Congo one time, was given from the pygmies to Jean-Paul Hallette, who was a famous explorer down there. And I had all these plans to grow massive amounts of it. And I had a logo all picked out, get small. But the problem was the weed just didn't cut it. your Congo is great,
Yeah.
right, son?
Can I ask you this, Sam? Because you're probably the guy that's gone through the biggest populations. You know, like when I was hearing Marcus say that, I was thinking, you know, well, that's usually someone that has a lot of insecurities that's holding on to something. And as I've started to run through larger SIFs, you know, a 500,000, I've gotten really confident that I'm kind of sitting in this position right now, and maybe it's an immature position to be in, but I feel like I don't need any one specific elite cut. I can find enough stuff if I go through big enough populations. And so I guess the question is, do you find that to be true, or do you still think that it's like, yeah, those elites are elites and they're outliers?
What do you consider a big population?
I don't know. You tell me. I mean, it could be whatever. It could be 1,000. It could be 10,000. It could be 20,000. You know.
Yeah. Well, at 20,000, you will probably get a very elite cut. In a closet with 10 plants, you're lucky to get an elite cut.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah,
Hey, welcome.
They
Welcome
tried to
to
do
Ian.
the same thing with OG Kush, you know, where they, you know, people tried to hold on to it, and people swore, and it wasn't until the person who made that original swear died that it finally made its propagation out through the 90s and made its way out. So yeah, I've never understood the absolute sentencing of a genetic to private use and nobody getting access to it. Sorry.
There's also different ways to pass things out. If you felt you worked for years and years in selection to get a particular cut, then make seeds and sell those. I mean, you can make millions of seeds and pass it out to the community, and everybody that wants one can get one.
What I like is that you actually speak from experience when you said you can make millions of seeds. I thought that motherfucker has done this already.
I have done it many times.
How about sweet skunk
Just a
crossed
few
with
times.
Congolese? Little sweet skunk.
That's yeah.
Oh, snapper. Hey, I wanted to welcome Ian Davidson to the room. Mr. Segra himself has arrived, and I gotta welcome him to the room, dude. How you doing, man?
Hey guys, I'm good. I ran a little late. I was chasing some horses around here.
Oh, you know, I was in the forest. I was in the forest yesterday in Squamish picking mushrooms. We were picking yellowfoots, actually, chanterelles. And a horse was walking through the forest. At first, we thought it was a wild horse, but it actually had a person with it. But it reminded me of you. I know how much your daughter likes to ride horses.
Yeah, we had some breakouts this morning here, but it's all good. How's everybody doing?
We're doing pretty good. We got a little bit into the conversation. Actually, Etienne asked a good, or maybe it wasn't Etienne. I can't remember who asked the question, but it was basically like, where are we in a place with tissue culture and cannabis right now where people, it was Collin, that we could get to a point. And I mean, actually, before I ask this question, what I would really like, Ian, is for you to introduce yourself, let everyone know a little bit of your history in the industry, and let them know how you came to start and become a part of the tissue culture company, Segra-International. That would be a good start, actually.
Sure. We get a little spiel here. Oh, hold on. What do I do? Pushing the buttons. Oh, yeah. You know, I mean, probably like most people here, I've been in this for a long time, in California primarily. And if any of you guys have heard of my business, I started this company, Biologic Systems, and we've got a whole line of certified organic soil amendments and et cetera down here in Cali, primarily in Oregon. So I've done that for a long time, kind of seen the industry through that lens quite a bit. And, you know, I ended up spending about 4 years down in Santa Barbara County, scaling a fair bit of several of the big greenhouses down there, working with these Dutch guys and helping them to kind of figure out, you know, what to do. And, you know, in that process, we scaled up to producing about around 150,000 clones a month. And it just really got out of control. You know, I mean, trying to manage a half acre of mother plants and trying to do all that, you know, with the pesticides that we have at hand. And it's just a huge challenge. And So, about 4 years ago, I started looking at tissue culture. I mean, down in Cali, we watch these strawberry growers come out and, they'll plant 1 million strawberry plants over a weekend, right? All from TC. They all look exactly the same. And, that's the way that their business ticks. They got a little jet they're flying around with their tissue culture plants, making it happen, in all their locations. And so, the question was like, why can't we do it for cannabis, right? We can do it for these other plants. So, I started doing my homework, and I spent about a year traveling around the world. I met pretty much every company I could find that was claiming to do this work on cannabis, and learned all about it along the way. I learned the questions that you ask, and the key metrics, how the business works. And then I met the team at Segra in Vancouver there, and they really, to me, seemed to be kind of the clear leader in the space, really for two reasons. Our Dr. Zubaid that runs our TC program, he's been working on cannabis for 15 years under a federal research license in Canada. And then, we also have a genotyping lab that allows us to do, we do over 1,000 samples a month right now, just checking everything, right? Checking to make sure we don't mix stuff up, starting to look and observe at and managing somoclonal variation, which is, a huge piece of the TC puzzle, and is really kind of the big risk that's involved in it. If I can elaborate on that a bit, I'm on a little bit of a tangent now, but it's probably a real important one. So, you got all these TC labs popping up all over for cannabis right now. And, what happens in conventional tissue culture, is usually around like 4 years after making clones from clones in TC, you start to see mutation, right? The plants start to mutate. And you're literally, compounding that clonal process. And if there's any kind of mutation that happens, there's a good chance it can carry on because you're making these clones so fast from each other. So, managing that risk, like we're seeing in cannabis at about 2 years into the process, that somoclonal variation starting to rear its head at like statistically relevant levels. So there's a whole process of how you manage that, right? You can isolate shoots. We have a genotyping lab, so we can isolate 100 shoots that have not mutated, and you start building a population from those. You ramp that population up, and you start ramping down the old population. And that's what they do. Blueberries, bananas, papayas, etc. That's the way that business works, where, they all know the mutation is a risk, and you watch for it, and you monitor it, and you react to it, and you can actually manage it. Now, if you're running a TC lab and you're not watching those things, and you don't have the capacity to do that kind of testing, it can be a huge disaster. And we're starting to see that in Cali right now. I've seen several of these labs out here where they're at about that process. They're 2 years in, 2.5 years in, and they're starting to see really weird things happening, and they don't really know any idea why, or like the tools to be able to study it and figure out what's going on there. You got a question?
That was awesome.
Would you see the same thing like that and say moms over years of taking cuts and trying to hold that mom, say over 10 or 20 years? Would you see the same in what you're talking about right now? Because I'm just raising question to myself as you're talking about that. I've had the same strains. Like
genetic drift.
15 years, right? 18 years.
Yeah. So genetic drift is when you're going to have that mutation happen in live plants, right outside of TC. However, our assumption at this point, from everything that we see, all this research we're doing right now, is that 99% of those symptoms that you're seeing are not mutation. They are either viruses or they're intercellular bacteria, right? And more than likely, the second of those categories, the intercellular bacteria, where what that is when you're making clones, right? Like you say you're the mother plant, and I come in with my razor blades and I'm slicing you up all over the place, you're probably going to get some infections, right? Mm-hmm. And, bacteria are going to start working their way into your body. So like when we do the tissue culture process with these serial clones, like these really, really old clones, a couple of the worst have come from yours truly on this call, or Marcus truly on this call. These old clones, they've been cut so many times, and each time you're building up this bacterial load. And these aren't plant pathogens. These are essentially functioning like a parasite in the plant. It's kind of like yeast infection, right? And they slow the plant down. They make the plant's immune system drop. You know, and when you do the tissue culture, the initiation process, you know, we've got a technique we do that literally migrates all that stuff out of the plant. It looks like snot coming out of the side of the stem. And you know, there's some tricks you do to just kind of keep sucking it out. It's really wild. So, you know, so mutation from cloning is very, very rare. And it does happen, absolutely. But it happens very slowly over a course of time. And from what we can see, from all the genotype testing we're doing in cannabis, we haven't seen an example yet with a clone where we've seen a documented mutation between two clones and any connection to a symptom. So, you know, what we all really need to be focused on there is the, you know, the pathogen side of the equation. That's really what's causing the problem in the cloning, you know, serial cloning process.
Can I ask a definition question? Tissue culture versus like meristem scrubbing. You know, I think that a lot of people I've heard, and that's why I'm asking you, you can clarify it for me and for everyone else, but I've heard a lot of people misuse the word tissue culture when they're not going to a true tissue culture, or they're doing some sort of scrub. I don't know. Can you explain that to me?
I'm kind of guilty right here misusing it. Okay, so you know, tissue culture is a family of technologies, right?
Okay.
And so, you know, the majority of people in the world who are studying the field of plant tissue culture, they're actually in the genetic engineering world. Okay, so like there's really two forms that you can execute tissue culture from. One is callus, right? You've got a little blob of undifferentiated cells, like you'll see in pictures, right? It's a little blob in like a petri dish, and those cells are essentially like stem cells, right? And that's where you can go and like insert your pig genes, or, you know, whatever kind of crazy GMO you're trying to do, right? That all happens through callus tissue culture, which has nothing to do with mass production nodal propagation, right? Where you start with meristematic tissue culture, you isolate the meristem, you know, that's what we do. You start growing from there. And then literally you're making clones from clones from clones, right? You'd refer to that as nodal propagation, right? Or, you know, micropropagation, right? So 90% of the field of tissue culture are these guys, probably more, 95, are these guys that are studying callus tissue culture, really with the goal of developing genetically engineered plants. The people doing nodal propagation for production is this really small subset of the business. Like, you know, this guy, Dr. Zubaid, that works for us, there's only about 100 of those guys in the world that know how to manage these labs that produce over 10 million plants a year. And it's a, you know, that world is as much farming as it is a science, right? Like these guys that know how to run these big production labs, you know, they can look at a crop of jars, like you could probably look at a room full of veg plants and be like, oh, they need a little more of this or a little less of that, you know? So it's, you know, it's art and science. But yeah, the, you know, there's a whole suite of technologies like synthetic seeds, and, you know, it goes on, that all of these technologies fit within the field of tissue culture. But what we're really focused on is just that micropropagation.
And I didn't understand that. I wasn't trying to call you out. I just
take his kids.
No. Yeah, that's an important starting point, right? It's like,
so,
you know,
like,
we should really be talking micropropagation for the most
so
part.
if, you know, and like you're saying, this is going on in strawberries, and I'm hearing you say how actually small the percentage of people, you said that under 100 people are actually doing microprop proficiently. You know, is it? I mean, isn't it in bigger
big labs? Yeah, because there's about 100 of them in the world.
Gotcha.
So
they're just like the ones that are doing it can throw out so much that they're making a significant impact, like on the strawberry industry.
Like Vitro Plus in Poland, they produce 80% of all the ornamental ferns for the entire planet from a single lab.
Ian,
so from one lab in Poland.
Quick question. There's a bunch of people who are watching, and if there's only 100 of these people in the world, what would they, if somebody were watching and wanted to learn how to do this propagation and learn this science, what would you recommend that they take in college?
I'd recommend that they go to Chiba University in Japan and study with Dr. Kozai, who is the father of tissue culture, and they have the most advanced tissue culture program in the world there. That's where Dr. Zubaid studied, and So it's it's a great question. Like to get into the field, you got to get into these labs. It's like I see a lot of people passing around this like plant and test tubes book. Like you're not going to learn how to do mass production through that book. Like the real, what really kind of qualifies these professionals is experience at scale. And the ability to, like I kind of started out talking about that somoclonal thing. It's like managing all of this stuff. It's farming. Like you get good at it over years and decades of experience. And that's kind of the most profound part to me of this whole business, is like it's this crazy intersection of like manufacturing and plants. Where we really are getting about as close as you can get to like a manufacturing process, still working with a plant.
Are the schools in Japan you're talking about, do they teach in Japanese or English? Do you have to learn Japanese first?
No, you don't. They teach the science is taught in English. Yeah, Dr. Zabide went there as an English teacher or English student. So no, you don't.
So in this micro prop concept, in my mind, I've heard tissue culture, and I think that you can hand over your genetics to a scientist. They can chop it up, they put it in the solution, and then it's in a refrigerator, and then I can pull it out of that refrigerator whenever I want, or they can, and they can grow it out. Is that the same with the micro prop, or is it more like micro prop? You're just managing on a small.
There's two. Yeah. Well, there's two different kind of approaches on the storage side. As we're doing it right now, like at Segra, we've got germplasm collections now for 10 of the big LPs in Canada, and we're like backing up their stuff, and in some cases doing micropropagation, right? But all of that storage in our method, right? We're storing all the plants still as nodes, as live nodes in the jars. But what we do is we put them in a special media that makes them grow really, really slow, right? Or it just doesn't, so they, typically in TC, we have to move all of our plantlets into a fresh jar with fresh media every 4 weeks, right? And if you don't, they die, right? Because they're, all the nutrients they're taking up are in the agar, right? Their whole carbon source is in the agar. The light is basically just tricking them to kind of stay alive. Like they're growing off of the sugar from the agar rather than photosynthesis, right? So, we can store plants by slowing them down, where then now we don't have to transfer them every month. We can transfer them every 3 months, right? And in that kind of storage, you can call it up really fast, right? Like let's say you decide, oh, I want that plant, then the other option is cryopreservation, right? And in cryopreservation, we can actually put that stuff away in the freezer. But if you say you want, and there, without touching it, it can last essentially indefinitely, right? But if you say you want to call something up from cryopreservation, right? For us right now, that's still an experiment. And, we think that timeline is probably somewhere between 6 and 12 months to be able to bring something out and actually start working with it again.
So Ian, before we get to taking something out or even putting something in for storage, can you explain now, as you explained how 80 to 90% of problems with plants are actually these viruses or fungi or intracellular bacterias? Can you explain the importance of tissue culture in the sense of initiation?
Yeah, so TC, right, tissue culture and micropropagation, right, more specifically here, it's a 4-step process, right? So you've got initiation, it's the same 4 steps, whether you're doing blueberries or cannabis, right? Initiation is the process where you're going to remove all the contamination. And then you move into multiplication, where you're going to, grow them, multiply them. 3rd stage is rooting, where you put the roots on the plantlets. And then the 4th stage is acclimation, where you're going to, just like with clones, right? Slowly reduce the humidity and bring them out into the real world. So, the initiation process is really quite fascinating. And I think that's where a lot of people are really struggling, where, they think that they've made it through the process and they think that they've got a clean culture, and they start trying to move into the next phase, into multiplication, and they really don't, right? There's still some intercellular bacteria in there. There's still things or virus that are slowing that process down. So, initiation for us, we've done now over 150 cultivars, and we've been successful at all of them. We haven't had one we haven't been able to get through the process yet. but they range. Some of them are going as fast as 5 months through that process. Some are taking 12 or 14 months, and it really depends on how dirty that stuff is when it comes into us, right? So these serial clones that have come in, yeah, some of them have taken a year to get through that process. Other times when we're working right from a seed, that can go super fast. Why? Because the seed isn't chock full of all this contamination yet. We can move a lot faster with it. So you'll hear a lot of people talking about doing this process in a 2, 3, 4 months, and that's just really not realistic. You really, like, when we make a promise to a client, we say it's going to take 9 to 12 months, and we've done about 80% of the cultivars in like 6 or 7 months, and really it's just these outliers that do take that extra time. And basically what we're doing, right, is we're isolating the meristem. So in the plant, the meristem is essentially separated from the vascular system of the plant. It's floating, right, and there's kind of a gel layer that separates it from the plant. And that's how these plants have evolved to protect themselves from viruses. So that growing tip is essentially growing faster than the viruses can move in and infect it. So you isolate that little tiny meristem, it's microscopic, right? And then you're going to grow that out. And then we're going to go through that process again, and potentially again if we have to. And so that's where if it's clean enough, we can kind of catch it on that first turn. But usually it's going to take more than one cycle to get through there.
The other thing you're going to need, of course, Ian, and I'm sure you guys got it already, is a test to confirm the fungi was there and gone now. Test to confirm a bacteria is there and then gone, and test to confirm viruses were there and gone. And few people know how to do that properly.
Yeah, good question. So, we've got a lab, our molecular biology lab in Richmond. We've developed molecular-based assays now for like Phytophthora, Rhizoctonia, Sclerotinia, Botrytis. There's a couple more on there that we have. And then the virus testing right now is really a disaster. Like in our opinion, we haven't seen a lab yet that we consider to be validated doing a virus test on cannabis. Like A&L in Canada, they're ripping tons of these tests. They're issuing what we're assuming are false positives left and right. Virus testing, like we're learning with coronavirus, it's the hardest analytical testing in the world, right? Like viruses are constantly changing and mutating and are extremely difficult to fingerprint and identify. And so so let me get your.
It's even beyond that, Ian. The truth of it is most of these companies don't know how many viruses have been identified in cannabis. Whether they have symptoms or not is a separate issue.
Right.
But identified 27.
Yeah. Now, are you seeing things with the older clones like Fusarium and things that have been passed on from just backyard to tent grower to indoor grower and back again?
To be honest, we were not testing for fungus and bacteria. We were looking at viruses. That was our focus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the key here is, like, if you look at how these other industries manage this risk, like strawberries, right? In the strawberry business, like they know that, the use of meristematic tissue culture removes 99.999% of any of these risks, viruses, bacteria, etc. And, they're like studying the viruses, of course, there's millions of dollars that goes into that. However, really from the production side, they're like Driscolls and stuff, they're not wasting their time, right? Because they know that the technique removes all that stuff. And on a very rare occasion, something slips through it. So, I mean, of course they're trying to understand these things, but the key backbone of all this is that when you look across all of these other crops that have gone through this process, that's the statistical reality, is if you do the process correctly, you're going to remove everything, right? So, it might be another 20 years before we really understand all of these viruses that are in cannabis. And absolutely they're there, and the majority of them may well be completely benign, and we're in really, really early days to be able to understand that. And I would use huge caution in trusting the data coming from any lab on these virus assays. Like, our our chief science officer is a PhD virologist, 30 years. He taught epidemiology at UBC. And, his take on this is basically like, for us, even at Segra, it's going to take us probably another 2 years to have our first virus assays out, really trying to do it the right way. And we're talking like, millions of dollars of research money that's being designated to get to that goal. So, it's a very tricky issue right now, because we really don't have the analytical tools, and several of these labs appear to really be kind of running wild with this testing. I mean, like in California now, the whole hop latent viroid deal here, there's several labs offering it, and we've been doing our due diligence, like interviewing these labs, trying to see if we can find a partner anywhere in the world to do this testing, and we haven't found anybody yet that we feel like has really has a validated process for looking at them. So but I think the key for all of us in the near term is, like, we do know, like, from looking at these other crops, we have a technology that statistically should remove all of those things. But no, we don't have, the ability to do all of that testing. Like, when things leave our door, we go through our list of 6. We've got these 6 pathogens we can test for now. And then obviously, we're doing microscopy and, everything that we can. But yeah, it's really early days still in having credible, virus detection at scale for this business.
It may be the early days, but at the same time, it is the future. If you look at wine growers, so when they plant a new field of grape varieties, you better believe they're all certified virus-free, because they don't use anything else. It is the future.
Yeah, well, and who's developing most of those cultivars, right? It's university systems, and they've got, like UC Davis, they got hundreds of millions of dollars that goes into, developing these lines and developing the processes. And, so, I think as you start seeing, like, the big, ag institutional universities in the country, in the world, start to descend on this, we're going to get answers a lot faster. But, right now, relying on, like small companies like Segra and, private small labs to, like, figure this out, like, none of us have the budgets to be able to really do it,
Did you say there's only 27 viruses that have been isolated at this time?
Well, so
what did you say, David? I don't have a number on that. I think you threw a number out there.
I've found 27 viruses that have been identified in cannabis. More than half of them do not have any symptoms, but there's some controversy whether or not, if you have 10 of those non-symptom viruses, then collectively they may start to show symptoms.
And are these listed in the hemp viruses and diseases book, or are these unclassified at this time?
No, maybe half of them are there. The other ones I've collected and been in contact with viral researchers and add them one by one by one by one until now the total is 27.
So I have a question. I've seen a good bit at scale in terms of viral decline in a plant's health, and specifically when it goes from veg into flower, you see the transformation happen. I've documented with photos, and I've done this over the past few years. And my question is from a couple of these things I've kept just in hopes that I could bring them into a tissue culture environment and kind of clean them and bring them back to quote unquote life. And I guess the real question is that hope and that dream to bring that specific variety back, is that real in terms of what you were talking about when you bring it in to clean it? are you going to come out with genetic drift, and how real is that? And what does that look like for someone like myself that wants to save things and kind of preserve and keep things? It's not that everything has been like that. It's just there's 2 or 3 varieties that I've noticed that just don't perform the same way, and you can clearly see it through photos.
Yeah, you just got to get them into the tissue culture process, right? I mean, it's like we can't answer those questions yet of exactly what's what's there or what's not, right? And but it's really kind of unimportant. It's like remove the stuff and let's see what happens with the plant. I mean, some of these plants, like we did over the last year and a half, we've done trials with 4 of the big LPs where we built the TC lab in their facility. We grew their strains. We flowered the clones next to the TC plants like 18 months later, right?
Right.
And I mean, in some of those examples, the plants came out and they don't even look like the same strain. Like there was one that was like a narrow leaf indica, 7 years ago, and the plants that we initiated looked like a long leaf sativa. And after we removed whatever we did, I don't know what we removed, the plants looked totally different. They looked, and the grower was like, holy shit. Like he showed me a picture. He's like, dude, look at this plant from, 6 years ago. That's what it looked like. Right.
Interesting.
So, so it's the effect of all of this on the plant, is far and beyond, potentially just like slowing it down or, having little differences. It can be drastic. Now that's an extreme example I'm giving you. Most of the plants,
what I see are extreme examples. Like I should send you some photos. I mean, they're extreme. You see even the internodal lengths are just, it's insane. I mean, you're looking at very different, completely different plants almost. So well, cool. That's really good information. So are we at the point where you think we can replace mother rooms and put them into with the trained operator to really run your varieties over and over, like you're saying with micropropagation, or are we still in that in between stage where we're still learning what the best path forward is?
Yeah, I think I think we're still kind of in the middle of that right now. Like at Segra, I mean, we're doing it. We're now producing plants at scale. We shipped out orders this year up to 40,000 in a single order. So it's happening. The real challenge, well, a couple things, is cultivars. They don't all perform the same in tissue culture. There's some that really seem to slip right in there and be very happy, and there's others that aren't, right? They don't multiply as easily, and so like I said, we've got about 250 cultivars that we've put through the process, and out of that there's about 30 now that we feel really confident in our ability to consistently produce them, and the acclimation to know how to bring them out, right? Because you'll see a lot of these plants, they come out looking like chia pets or kind of crazy, and that's again the whole talent of like, how do you make that transition really smooth as you're coming out of the process, and that's something that takes years of trials, and so there's really kind of like at this point in the evolution of tissue culture for cannabis, at least for us, it's really kind of a phenotyping process that we go through again, right, with the plant, where it's like, you give me your thing that's got everything you like, and I put it in TC, and it's going to take us some time to figure out how to work with it in that environment, and we've got some cultivars that we're just like, nah, that one's going on the shelf. Like we're we could maybe spend a bunch of time and energy working with it and figuring it out, but it's at this point in the game, we can't, we're trying to just focus on going with what we have. So I think the integration into like production, the thing that's been really interesting is that these TC plants, there's this term called like a sigmoidal curve, right? So like when you look at the growth of a cannabis plant, it kind of exponentially starts growing faster and producing more biomass as it gains momentum and gains size. What we've noticed with the TC plants is, for the first 2 to 3 weeks of their life, they do grow way slower than a clone would, right? So, essentially, if you're going to do this, you really are adding about 2 weeks of time, 2 to 3 weeks of time into the overall growth cycle of that plant, right? So that sounds like a bad thing, right? It's like, wait a minute, I got to grow that plant for another 3 weeks, right? That's time and money and resources, etc. However, what we're tending to do now is, our product is, if you look on our website, we call them a micro plug, where they're tiny. They're instead of a 50 cell tray of clones, there's 200 in that same spacing, right? And most of our clients are taking those and then they're putting them into a 50 cell tray, right, and putting them on a rack for 2 weeks. So like, yeah, it's taking an extra 2 weeks, but it's on a vertical rack using almost no square footage and very little lighting, so
little energy.
what you get in the trade-off is you get a plant that's consistent and clean, right? But yeah, it does have that extra workflow. So there's a lot of complaints around, the TC plants grow too slowly, they take too long, and yeah, they do take a little longer. And like, let's say you're doing an ultra high density indoor where you only veg for 2 weeks, right? Yeah, that's like, that's a challenge because it's going to take longer. Our little plants grow so slowly in that first phase. So that's one of the challenges. Like, the two real big challenges that we're trying to manage are getting that consistent growth coming out of acclimation, and then keeping our eyes on this whole mutation risk, essentially.
Ian, there was a question in the chat. It was about viruses, and they said, are the viruses airborne? And as far as I know, they're spread by tools, by people, and by insects with direct contact.
Yep. The only place I think there could be an airborne risk is in post-harvest processing. Like if you're grinding up lots of fresh material, if you're literally grinding material and putting it in the air, yeah, you could have, but it's particles flying around in the air. It's not like necessarily just like us with COVID of like breathing bacteria. It's not going to just breathe off the stomas of the plants, right? So yeah, tools, and I mean, like you see down here in California, like guys that I know down here that are getting more sophisticated, yeah, they've got systems now where like every employee is sanitizing all of their tools between plants. And that's sanitization is an enormous deal. And like cloning, like if you are doing cloning, like you should be doing it in like a laboratory type environment, like you should be doing everything you can, like, I mean, I'm guilty over the years, it's like you just start getting used to it and, use an old cutting board and some razor blade or whatever, like the use of, peroxide and what's the stuff in cleanse? Is it calcium what do they call it stuff? Hypochlorate. There's this other substance in that.
Hypochlorous acid.
Yeah, hypochlorous acid, you should be using these tools, to make the absolute cleanest plant that you possibly can. Like, just going into the grow room with your dirty hands and your dirty scissors and your tray and chopping away, like, you're asking for trouble. So, definitely cleaning up that workflow can make, enormous, differences in your ability to manage the problem. But the real solution will be a concert of these things, right? It's like moving to a real clean stock kind of starting material like TC, and then also, amping up the hygiene, like, like when you go in the big tomato greenhouses, those guys have, in a couple of them, I've seen these things. Like I haven't seen the product yet in productized, they make them themselves where like when they squeeze their scissors on the plants, it like shoots out a little bit of this sanitizing liquid right onto the blade of the scissors, and they've got a little like pouch of their little sanitizer stuff that they're actually like using out in the garden. I've seen that in a couple of these big 1 million square foot greenhouses, and like they both made them themselves. I'm curious if anybody's ever seen a product like that. Like I've searched around for one and I haven't been able to find one, but yeah,
the closest I've seen, Ian, is where people use a tool for one plant, whether it's one chop or 100 chops on that plant. And then they put the tool in a jar of a disinfectant of some sort and use a different tool and leave them soaking in there a half an hour or so. Then they can reuse them.
Yeah, it sounds like fun, right? It's like you're in the greenhouse with 100,000 plants trying to use clean tools on every plant. So, but it will definitely make it, all the sanitization efforts like really do
But
pay.
it depends how big your plants are. My mother plants used to be 15 feet tall. I could easily get thousands of clones from one mother, then change a tool.
Yeah.
So most of these viruses and bacteria come through the cut part of a plant. They're not being transferred between each plant as they touch each other. They basically get stored in the plant because of how it's propagated.
Well, the cut is, just creating an open wound site. I mean, you think about in a greenhouse or a grow, like the amount of bacteria flying around in the air in there, of thousands and thousands of species. So yeah, it's really that, that cutting process. So, like again, when you're making your moms, using sanitized tools, if you're making really big cuts on a plant, using something, any of these tree wound type substances, to cover up that big wound. It's like you wouldn't walk around with a huge cut on your arm. Like you're going to put something over it to keep things clean, I like anecdotally, these risks really, from what I've seen so far, seem to be much higher with people who are running soil-based systems. Unfortunately, I'm a big organics guy myself, but gosh, when you got soil in that room and all the biology that comes in with that, is just another variable, right? However, a lot of those organisms may be really good at keeping your plant clean too, got all the good guys. So it's a game of roulette, right? So
beneficial versus non-beneficial, right? Who wins?
Yep, exactly.
Awesome,
Well,
dude.
I think the real key with it is that we want to, support ecosystems that promote beneficial organisms. The microbacteria that within the soil that are going to feed the plants, but while at the same time creating a sterile, propagation line that way that each time we propagate that clone, it comes out more sterile than the previous time. And then, it's just a matter of as you see those bad, whether bad insects or bad microbes show up, there's generally a bigger insect or microbe that'll eat them. You just have to, there's, for example, lactobacillus eating some of the mildews, but with the rules and regulations around cannabis, you have to, start from as clean of a cutting as possible just to minimize that contamination when you're restarting rooms or greenhouses.
Ian, I want to say one thing, and that was that many viruses can be transmitted by both seeds and pollen.
Absolutely.
So I don't know about bacteria and fungi, but viruses, I would say the majority of them can be transported in seed and in pollen.
That's a key comment right there. I mean, it's like if you look at crops like papayas, right? They are produced through tissue culture. They're also, they're a prolific seed producing plant, right? It's like, and why they're still done through TC is because of the virus issues where, they carry right through the seed. And, you wouldn't have today like a global viable, papaya industry without the ability to control and manage the virus, right? Hold on just one sec, guys. I'll be right back.
I was just going to say on the reason I was so quick to pop on the hypochlorous acid is because I bought this machine about a year ago that makes hypochlorous acid water for me. It's kind of a weird deal, and It's expensive. The brand that I bought, it's not really for farm use, but I think there's some models out there that are for farm use, and they basically electrolyze and use salt water to make a sterile, low pH 2.5 electrolyzed water. And I got it as it was sold as an IPM deal. Like I could spray the low pH to kill insects, and then spray the extremely high pH to kill pathogens. And it's been all right working for me. To be honest, I haven't used it as much for that, but what I have used it for, and it's really up my game in taking my cuts and all my tools, because I just push this fucking button, and out comes this water. It's sterile, but it's not bleach. It's not toxic. Like I don't mind being on me or spilling or whatever, using excessive amounts, because I have this machine and I just push the button and out it comes. And so I use it all over the place, and it's really stepped my game up in my sterility, because I am an organic guy, and there's a lot of stuff floating around. And then the other comment on that is just like being smart. Yes, things compost. Yes, there's a bigger guy to eat something, but there's a time and a place for that. And I leave the composting for the compost pile, and try to keep things pretty as clean as I can, given the fact that I have a really tons of plants growing in there that are not just cannabis. There's all sorts of shit. But my what for?
What about another thing I wanted to talk about in regards to what you guys are doing with tissue culture is the lab work and the potential future of being able to use, I guess, genetic identification, like being able to see the gene synthesis, find them in a way. I know we're not quite there yet, but can you talk a little bit about that, if you have any idea what I'm actually talking about?
Are you thinking about the breeding side?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like at Segra, like I mentioned, we've got two different businesses, really. There's the tissue culture operation led by this guy, Dr. Zubaid, and then we have a separate facility that's really run like a different business. That's our molecular biology lab run by this guy, Dr. John Brunstein. And, they're very intentionally in two different places. Like at the genotyping lab, we've got permits there to possess and do testing with all these controlled pathogens. So like obviously we want that to be in a different place. So in that division of the company, we are working on developing a bunch of different genomics tools that should lead us towards the ability to start doing marker assisted breeding. There's a couple things I'd mention here where, the first genotyping test we developed is called this VNTR test. And VNTR is what's used in essentially every forensics lab in the world, right? And VNTR has been established to be able to tell, like, is the blood on the table your blood? And, if so, you're going to prison for life, right? So, and it's used in all of these forensics labs around the world, so they have a standardized test to be able to do this fingerprinting, and everybody uses the same thing, right? Wouldn't that be nice in cannabis? So we developed that test where, like, if you give me a plant sample, right, you give me 2 leaves, I can test the 2 of them, and I can tell you, like a fingerprint, if they're the same or not, right? If they have the same fingerprint, but I can't tell any of the trait information. I can't tell, if that plant's going to be tall or short or high THC or low THC. Like, that VNTR looks at 12 markers, which is, like, we found statistically to be just enough for us to be able to, with an extremely high level of certainty, guarantee 2 things are the same or not, right? But like the key there is, as we're collaborating with other organizations, right, you can give us your germplasm, and that's the only kind of genotype test we would do on that plant, right? It's in our contract. It says we'll do a VNTR, and that's just so we can guarantee that we're not mixing things up, and that when we ship it out, we VNTR it, make sure it's exactly what it's supposed to be. But then, behind the scenes, we're developing other genomics tests that are really going to be useful for plant breeding. And the whole kind of genomics world of late has really been chasing this Illumina testing, like you'll hear, Phyllis Bioscience does, and that's like extremely high resolution testing. It's really, really expensive. And we've been developing tools. It's kind of like that's like a digital recording, you know, versus you know, I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, the you know, the really high resolution testing like Illumina is like looking at a digital recording, whereas like the VNTR is kind of like a cassette tape, right? It's much lower resolution, but it's way cheaper, right? We can run these VNTR tests for super cheap. So, you know, we're working on developing tests that are kind of between Illumina and VNTR that are like stepping stones to getting you to those to using the higher resolution test like the Illumina test. So, you know, the whole like world here of being able to identify high value markers and utilize those markers actively in a breeding program, you know, is still very much in its infancy. Like we figure we're probably about another, you know, 2 to 3 years out from being able to apply these technologies to actually utilizing marker assisted breeding. And, you know, I'm sure some of these big LPs are making some moves there, but it's going to take quite a while to for those.
Like you say, it's not so simple, Ian, because some markers, for example, for a particular cannabinoid or for a particular terpene, that you can see relatively easy. But what you can't see is how much is the plant going to express under optimal conditions. In other words, is it going to produce a whole lot of CBC or practically none? That nobody's really got their hands around that yet.
And here's another question. If they do see that synthase, can they tell if it will be on or off?
Not with certainty yet. Yeah, it's you know, I think all of this is you know, we're in the dugout here. We're not even in the first inning. You know, with the application of, you know, molecular breeding tools for cannabis. And I think it's, you know, like a big part of this is like, you know, really like the university systems, like once they start getting in and sinking their budgets into this stuff, it's going to start really rolling a lot faster. You know, because like on the private sector, you know, the companies that really have the tech, you know, they're not in cannabis yet. You know, they're not here. So, you know, there's, you know, small companies like ours that are, you know, chipping away at the bigger picture. But, you know, I think the you know, the big boys will be coming in here at some point.
They know it from many other commercial crops much better than cannabis, but they have scratched the surface. You know, they can find synthases and terpenes and other markers, but the ones that they really need for vigor, for resistance, those are the ones that are going to really change the industry.
Yeah, you're right. So, all right, I apologize. I'm gonna have to jump off here, fellas. We gotta go something here at 10:30.
Dude, thanks for throwing it down.
Well, it's a good start. I mentioned you, Marcus. We're doing this webinar on Thursday with Dr. Zubaid is doing the ABCs of PTC on Thursday afternoon. And if any of you guys want to learn more, that's going to be an awesome opportunity. We'll have an hour. He's going to go through a deck that like goes through, you know, all the different technologies, and then we're going to have a Q&A, and we're going to try and start doing those like once a month or something like that, different related webinars. So we're getting on the webinar train, and if any of you guys want to join us, it's free. It's on Thursday. You can register on our pages.
I'll put your website up in the comments in the description of this video so people will see it and be able to click on it and go right to registering.
Yep, sounds good.
I'm gonna come check it out as well. Dude, thanks so much for finally making it onto Hash Church, dude. That was awesome, man. Throwdown.
Yeah, and heads up, we're gonna be in the starting to operate in California this year. Working on that right now. So we've been
come see us.
Yeah, we're making the move. Are you in California?
Yeah, I'm in Berkeley. So come see us if you're in Northern California. You know, I'd love to give you a tour of Berkeley Patients Group. Yeah, we just turned 21.
I live in Auburn, up by Sacramento. So yeah, I'm in the hood for sure. So great to connect. I'd love to.
You should definitely go see Etienne.
Yeah, let's do it. Love to.
Absolutely. You will be very happy that you did. I can promise.
I'll take
Awesome,
that.
man.
Sure. All right, you guys. Hey, everybody, have a great Sunday, and love to all your families, and be safe, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, brother.
All
Have
right,
a good
peace.
one. Well, I felt like that was some pretty good information. Nice little conversation for about an hour there on tissue culture. And hopefully I'll be able to get Ian back here one day because he is a wealth of information when it comes to this stuff.
That was fascinating. I love asking questions when I can understand what's going on.
Let me tell you, it is the future of cannabis breeding and mass production. That's the way they do strawberries. That's the way they do grapes. It's the future.
Well, if we're going to have our Costco ounces, yeah, no doubt. It has to be that way, you know, if it's going to be propagated nationally in a way that is consistent so I can get my same OG Kush here as the same OG Kush on the East Coast without any issues, you know what I'm saying? Or Congolese or whatever genetic, that's still the issue and still the problem. So every growers, manufacturer, producers dealing with this problem of how to propagate safely their genetics. And it's one I had problems with when I was working with Ed, because Ed Rosenthal went, because we were definitely not in a sterilized room and environment. And we had, you know, certain problems that just inadvertently happened. And to know that this type of research is out there, that they're culling and pulling out these viruses and bacteria, and that there's actually methodologies that are sound that can be doing so. I can't see why any type of large company isn't looking for these type of propagators. So people are watching. They gave you the university in Japan to go to and learn this. We need a lot of you.
Big growers in the future, when they have a choice, will take the safe road, the clean road.
I love it as an opportunity for small growers. I love cannabis to get to a point where you could just open up the computer and be like, I'm going to order up some of these different cultivars that I hear them talking about on Hash Church. And then knowing with like, it's amazing to me how many people in the chat were kind of tripping. They were like, oh, they're hacking plants. This is some scientific GMO shit. I'm like, no. He's literally telling you this is the opposite of that. He's not doing that. He's taking fingerprints and marking a plant so that if you order it, he can give you a guarantee and out of a lab that's actually been validated, which is not a cheap thing to do. It takes a couple of years and it's millions of dollars to validate a lab. I know they did. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with GMO.
It has nothing to do. It's actually cloning. That's the first thing Ian ever told me about Dr. Schma. He said he's as much a farmer as he is a scientist, and he has to be an equal of both for this world to exist. This is not callous tissue culture. This is meristemic.
And to think that you could order micro plugs of safe genetics.
Oh my God.
Right?
Dude, what a huge advantage to give. That's the true gift for a patient, in my opinion. Like if patients could be ordering clean plants, do you know what listen, let's all be honest. It's not as easy as people sometimes say it is to grow cannabis. It's a lot of attention. It's like having a bloody puppy dog. You got to take care of this thing or it's going to die. Like you really have to take care of it. And so to be able to order clean plantlets and have that sort of advantage right from the beginning, rather than get like mited, aphided out, pests ridden, bacteria loaded, virus and fungi, the whole 9 yards. And then you're supposed to grow something with that. You're like, oh, I got like 26 grams. It's like, come on, man. They need the advantage. We all do.
It's also that way with seeds, Marcus. You buy seeds in the hope that they're going to give you what the breeder has promised. And that may or may not be the case. You may get one with 10 different phenotypes in each seed batch.
And a virus in that seed.
Ooh.
Yeah, who knows? Also, I didn't even want to get into that.
Or how many of those 27 potentially are in that seed.
Ooh. That's what I'm saying. I think it's great for initiation. I love it as a service. Can you imagine if there was just a facility one day where you could just bring your dirty ass, nasty, infested fucking plant, pay a fee, and in like 6 months, just like return back and be like, have the chance to put it into the library, especially if they fingerprint it and it's nothing they've ever seen. It's not a part of anything. They connect it to you. Now you somehow are making something off that plant. And you give it to them to let the rest of the world have access to it, or you give it to them only to hold just for you, whatever your mentality is. I just like the idea of being able to clean the plants, make them available to people. I certainly wouldn't like it if it just got locked into like giant universities and it was like, oh, no regular people could access it, or you could only buy the product. I mean, so be it. That's still probably going to happen. But I like the idea of it being available to everyone. That to me is a successful business model.
It would be nice if it was a little faster, like a car wash, 24 hours.
Yeah, that's the super uber duper future you're living in there.
Or even the super duper future of you could actually test that seed to find out what viruses are actually inside there. You have to grow the plant out currently, right, Sam, to actually...
You can test seed embryos, no problem.
You can do the seed, okay.
Yes. Of course, that destroys the seed. Then you no longer have that seed.
Right.
Whereas with a little plantlet, you just need a punch of a leaf.
Need the home unit.
Need a home unit, Johnny?
I need a home unit.
I saw you going in your garden and looking at your garden like, yeah, that ain't sterile.
Oh shit! I was like, I got plants everywhere. I'm just doing different feeding, different grow meetings, seeing what's taking what under what LEDs and what's feeding better, and seeing I'm just having fun and having for months. So yeah, but there's nothing sterile here at all, zero, right? So I'm just kind of looking. I go, it's my own research.
Johnny, I've had a greenhouse for 30 years. It was never sterile. If it would have, the plants wouldn't have grown as good.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun looking at how he's doing. I did some of those first grows with Segra. I got the strains right here. Remember that, Mark? So I remember that first tissue culture one. And just thinking about that and just thinking how he's able to kind of keep those strains alive and at the same time, just like you say, disease, bug free, everything that comes to you fresh. Curious after like 15 years of having this strain. I mean, where the problems lie, where I have the tops of buds just dying and just little things with different. I look at my plants and kind of wonder now. So
I'm sure it would be quite different if you got it all cleaned up and initiated.
Yeah, I'd love a mechanic shop where I could take my plant in. Will you please pull this shit out? Okay, boom. Yeah, like you said earlier, can you imagine that? Clean Your Genetics. Somebody would make a killing off a Clean Your Genetics company. I mean, but that would take a decade to even just get up.
Not only Clean Your Genetics, but imagine taking a plant or a seedling or a leaf or whatever it is that they need. They examine the DNA and they say, well, this plant has the ability to produce medium large amounts of THC, medium large amounts of XYZ, and they know not only which compounds they have the ability to produce, but in what sort of ratios and amounts. That will be the future.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see anyway. I like the idea of clean genetics. I feel a lot of growers, would probably instantaneously take the credit, but they're taking the grief when they're growing these plants that are just unable to express themselves, even with fairly decent growers. You get plants that are sick enough, and it's once they're sick, do you not agree, Sam, that they tend to attract pests? Like it's like these little insects, like just see that they're weak.
Of course, because they their resistance is down. It's
Yeah.
either dialed down or it just doesn't exist anymore.
But those
And,
bugs see that in some way.
So yeah, everybody would prefer to have the best, not only the variety they want that expresses the smells and effects and taste and cannabinoids they want, but they'd like the plant to be dependable. So it doesn't have health problems when you treated it in the normal way you treat plants successfully.
Yeah, true enough. True enough. Well, that's a lot to take in today. Ian was going off on a pretty high level of tissue culture.
My brain's mush, man. After that, I'm just like, I have.
Dude, I had him right in my head.
I'm going. Oh man,
I
Funny
liked
how
it.
it's. Oh, me too. I'm. You what?
You love science. You don't just like science. You passionately love science in a way that porn producers could never get the pictures of.
Absolutely true. Science is almost a religion to me, but I'm not a particularly religious person.
But your perpetuation of science has helped propagate generations of genetics that we wouldn't have known or had otherwise. So thank you for your science nerdedness and willingness to, go there, because, you made your mistakes early on to realize, I mean, I would assume that you realized early on that science was your friend and not your enemy.
Yeah, I mean, and I can honestly say that because most of my life I've been doing research and development, that I often learn more from mistakes than, I definitely have made more mistakes than successes, but you learn a lot when you remember, don't do this. And intellectually you may know it, but when you do it, then you don't do it again.
That's the key. Don't do it again when it's.
Would they say Einstein made like over 1,000 mistakes before he invented the light bulb or something? There's all these things. If you don't make mistakes, you're not learning. You're not moving forward. You're not growing forward. You got to make mistakes.
You're not trying to learn. Sure.
Did you just say Einstein invented the light bulb?
No, I said that wrong. I'm high. Completely.
That was awesome. That was like a Johnny B quote. I'm going back, and that's going to be. That is going to be. I was going to use one of Ian's little audio bits for the podcast, but now it absolutely has to be.
Glasses just broke.
Dude, that was amazing. I was like,
I'm not
did you just say Einstein invented the light bulb?
That was wrong. Good job.
That's awesome, dude. I love you, Johnny B.
What are you smoking, Johnny B? Because that's some good shit.
Medikush. It's been hanging for 30 days. It's just perfect, and it's getting me super stoned, especially for breakfast. And I'm on number 5 or 6. Plus, I'm smoking the hash, the bubble. I'm doing dabs of the Congo. What a great day to hang out on Sunday, right?
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Totally agreed. I had to bounce some dude from the chat. He just kept saying the most ridiculous shit. He's threatened by our conversation.
Remember I talked about those little
yeah, you did. I do. I remember. I guess
I got bags of these, and I'm going to be sending these out to certain people, so you guys know who you are. Please send me your mailing address. I can send these out to you at Chen and everybody else. Anybody involved with Hash Church, anybody who wants and knows the issue very well, please contact me. So I'm definitely a little momentum's of a good friend of ours, right? So
thanks, Johnny B. I guess I don't know if you guys want to chat for another half an hour. I'm down with making it a couple of hours, but I did just plan for a really short Hash Church this morning because it was such last minute. If you guys had things you wanted to discuss, I'm absolutely down. We've polarized the chat pretty good, or maybe it was just one guy I had to bounce from the chat because he was seemingly upset about our conversation about tissue culture. He suggested that we were going to be creating the technology and giving it to the sharks to rape us. I feel that some people are not puffing on very good herbs these days, and I know that people are stressful and or stressed out due to you know, this whole weird mind control thing everyone's going through currently.
It's like any other tool, Marcus. It can be used for good or for evil. Let's be honest.
Yeah, of course. I just try to keep it good. I'm trying, you know, it's just Sunday morning. I want everyone to have a good day and enjoy each other's vibes and not give audience to, you know, because we worked hard for this audience. And it's if when I see people being negative in the chat, I feel like, you know what, there's just you got to go create your own audience for that. If you want to be here and enjoy and you know, spend your time and share, then everyone's welcome. But if you're going to be negative, you gotta go.
One, do the bong rip.
Do a bong rip? Oh, well,
yeah.
maybe one last bong rip
There, huh?
for the hour. One last bong rip for the hour. Did we lose Joshua? Did he bounce? Is he still here? Oh yeah, he's there. He's there. He was going to get in touch with Kevin Godfrey and see if he wanted.
Yeah,
to
I sent him a message. I'm just here actually. I'm sterilizing my cloners. As we were speaking. It was on my list today, which I have 4, you know, big cloner water cloners, and it was on my list today. And like, there's a lazy part inside me still, you guys. And there, you know, I had this voice of this guy ringing in my head. He's like, "Oh, I just fucking put a little bleach in there, run them, and go again." And I actually work them down and scrub them really hard, and it takes me almost all day to clean my 4 cloners. And so he said that. I was like, "Damn it, Rutherford, like, do your thing, clean that shit up proper." So I just started.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just torching a bowl, and probably nobody wants to hear the torch.
I'm rolling.
No, I love the conversation. I'll just hop in. Like, I'm always thinking from, you know, I long time ago realized the food system and realized cannabis is going that way, and it's taken a lot longer than I thought it would take. But I'm okay with it. Like, I'm okay with the folks that want to fuck us. Not really that, but I just am okay that they exist, and that's going to happen, and it's a reality. And there's going to be big mega cannabis, and it's going to have a lot of bad impacts, but it's also going to have a lot of good impacts. It's going to have accessibility. There's this whole mixed box. But I look at like my place and our place in it, and it's always, like we say, the smaller thing. And so, you know, yeah, let them tissue culture their triploid, you know, fucking sour dub that comes in at like 67%, you know, total cannabinoids and blows everyone out of the water. That's going to be here in a couple years, and that's going to be in production. And what we have is something a lot more unique that cannot be produced, you know, with our, you know, terroir, if you will, you know, whether it's regional, individual, the way we cultivate, etc. You know, just, and then thinking, how does tissue culture play into that, into my like craft breeding program? Because there's no way I'm going to compete in my breeding with these mega cultivars. So I have to focus on doing something that's unique and that someone might want to, you know, smoke because they care about it a little bit more, rather than buying the Costco weed, you know. And yeah, so it's just really interesting thinking like, you know, maybe I need to figure this out on a small scale and set up a small little sterile room so I can be running batches this way and breeding larger batches. Like, I don't know, it's just really,
I mean, just having the ability to initiate your plants would be incredible. If you just had a little closet area where you're like, I'm just going to clean my plants, and you clean them and you plant them and start growing them. I mean, I saw some of the plants.
Before you breed with it, like, you're like, hey, I'm gonna set off this room full of pollen. I've got everyone lined up. What I'm gonna do? Let's sterilize it all, and then breed with that clean, and you'll make the best seed, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to just run over you there.
Oh, no problem. I'm also trying to talk to a dude in chat who's asking me something about like PGRs. He's like, you can only get like 3 and 4 star from PGRs. I'm like, well, no shit. Like,
so your consideration then is going towards something that's more artisan specific genetics. You know, is that what you're considering?
That's kind of what I was saying. Yeah, artisan specific, you know, unique, the old stuff, the stuff that doesn't work on mass scale, which is what I was doing when I took a break and did tomato farming. I was growing these heirlooms that no company can grow because they can't ship and whatever. So if I grow them in regionally and support just the local industry, and I can drop off my heirlooms on Friday that they're going to cut up that afternoon and serve Friday and Saturday night, it worked, and I could get a high dollar. So this is my whole, like, you know, I took a break from cannabis and learned all this by reading organic agriculture books and how to, like, you know, do all the things that we talk about. Take your product and stack the benefits by maybe make it into something else, and be just being an outlier and not, you know, I don't know. I just kind of gave in. Like, you guys won a long time ago. You won. You got it. You have big business. You're gonna take cannabis. I love cannabis. Where can I fit in this? You know.
I don't think they realize how cannabis is going to affect them. You know, where you
that is the other factor. You're right.
That's what people should have faith in cannabis, because you know, there's a reason why they kept it at bay for so long and kept the 9-foot steel door shut on cannabis for so long, because even deep down, they have to know how deep it's going to get into everyone's heads, whether they're wearing it or eating it for health or taking different cannabinoids that are different from THC, or straight dabbing or recreational using or preventative using, or, you know, and then the dozen new methods of using that will pop up over the course of the next 10 or 20 years as the science gets deeper and the cultivars get, you know, bred and created that have higher contents of different cannabinoids, different ratios. And I, for one, am looking forward to where we're going with cannabis.
Well, look what they did with wine. I mean, wine, you know, they had bottles of wine. They realized, well, just selling bottles of wine doesn't work. So maybe if we create an area where people can come and taste the wine. Okay, so I could see many cottage or artisan cannabis doing exactly that model, creating a nice area, a beautiful experience when people come in, from when they drive up to when they walk in, come sample the cannabis. Here's our smoke room, our ingestion room, and create that vibe. And that's the way they'll sell their genetics, just the same way as there's certain vintners here in California that only sell their wine through a mailing list or through their door, like Visa Tui. You'll never find them on a store shelf, but you'll go to that winery and pick up a couple of cases because that shit's good and they just produce enough just to sell that way or through their mailing list. So I see that model definitely becoming regional, like in the Humboldt or Mendocino. Some of the terroirs have now been set here in California. I can see that type of, you know, communal, but as well as for the artisan himself to show your wares, such as, you know, here's, you know, you could show a glass off, you know, wall that shows the actual cannabis growing, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, they could have the experience of seeing it just like the wines growing there at the, you know, at the winery. They get the whole experience there in a regional situation.
You walk in, you buy an ounce, you get a 2 grams of oil rosin, you get 10 cuts, and you go home and you get excited for 6 months for down the road.
I hope you're
and maybe
right.
You can call maybe you can call me, the breeder, and say, hey, what's going on with me in July? And I'm like, oh, hey, you need a compost tea. I'll brew you one up. Come and pick it up. Whatever. Like, that would be the, man, I'd just cry just dreaming of that, you know?
Well, I'm sure it's going to be true. Not only that, I would not be surprised if Costco and Kmart also have tasting rooms, smoking rooms. I mean, come on, it's better for society the wider it spreads. And, you know, some people like Bud, some people like, you know, craft beer. And I think there's room for everybody.
Yeah, you know, the way it came in through medical, it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to pull it away. I mean, here in Canada, it's very easy to get a license. You can grow your own, even if you don't have a license. You can grow 4 plants. Everyone in the country that's over 19 can grow 4 plants. But if you want, you just go get yourself a license and you can grow 30 or 50 or 100 or 200, you know, well within reason. It's not very difficult. You know, because cannabis is so effective for inflammation, really anything with inflammation can get you a permit. So
I'm
it's
surprised
pretty-
no one's tried to done it like Christmas tree places where you can come buy a live Christmas tree, just go cut your tree.
That's a
We're
nursery. I
talking
think.
about that in Washington, but it's all the laws, you know. We've been
Yeah.
talking about that for patients specifically in COVID. It's kind of gotten the legislators a little more open to look at this, and that was one of the things. Like, hey, we can bring a plant all the way to fruition, and they don't have to pay for the trimming, processing, drying. They can take it home. They can make it into oil, whatever they need to do.
Yeah, you could have a freezer on site. They could flash freeze it so it's transportable. Yeah.
I've been pushing this idea for 10, 20 years, and I absolutely agree. And economically, I think if you grew 100,000 plants and you sold them for $100 each for a plant that can yield a kilo or two after it's cleaned and dried, it's a lot of economic sense. But I think in California, the laws are in the way at this moment. But we can change laws.
Oh, well, we've established that. We didn't like 215. We changed that, and we don't like 64. So we'll change that. So if we just know what the parameters are, we'll frickin' fix it.
Hell yeah, we did the same thing, man. We had that the amazing group, the coalition that took on with John Conroy, took on the federal government here and just basically destroyed the federal government and maintained the ability to grow.
Change governments, and that's what the coalition did. The medical community got together and fought for a cause, and we won. That was awesome. Patients stood up for their rights, and we stand up more for cannabis than we have, and it's great to see. We need the rest of the world legalized, don't we? We got to do this for everybody. Exactly what's happening here in Canada and different parts of the world.
Access is key.
Every person, for any reason, anywhere in the world.
I 10.
Amen.
All right, I'll talk. What about these Amanita mushrooms behind me? How sweet is that?
those.
Are those
Mike-
near your house? Are those local?
Those are like literally in the parking lot of my work.
Yeah, I have those all over my yard.
They're all over Richmond. They're all over Squamish, which is both directions of from my house, north and south. They're actually just fairly prolific in and around Vancouver.
I actually took some a couple of times.
And how did you
Don't
like
you
the
have to-
Amanitas?
Aren't you supposed to dry them and smoke them? Isn't that the?
No, you don't have to smoke them. Mine were dried. I collected them in Santa Cruz, and it gives you it's sort of a dispersonation drug, and it makes you sort of take daydreams where you have dreams that you can remember, hallucination dreams or whatever. It's it's not my idea of a good clean psychedelic, but there are people who liked it. I mean, the ancient Vikings were called berserkers because they would eat these. And a funny thing about them is, of course, that you could take the urine from a reindeer that ate them, and it cleaned out the impurities that made you more sick if you can swallow the reindeer piss. And the berserker Vikings would pee into the bowls of their servants who would eat it, drink it. And they actually had a better trip than the berserkers because the mushrooms also have toxic chemicals, which are not passed along, but the psychedelic is pretty much.
Yeah, the
unchanged.
psychedelic doesn't metabolize in your liver. You
must
piss it out active. It's incredible.
Yeah,
So have
if you're going to harvest them, it's good to try them, expose them to 130 degrees, so that 130 degrees will break it. Fahrenheit will break down the hydrazine, I believe, is the poison that causes the nausea.
So Sam, have you drank actual reindeer piss?
No, I've never seen that or a berserker piss, but I cannot recommend these to people. It blurs your vision. It's not a true clear psychedelic.
I wouldn't be eating it, I'll tell you that much, but I find them beautiful to photograph, and that's really why I
For
shared
some reason,
them.
they always remind me of Santa Claus, or maybe it's kabouters.
Yeah. Well, why don't I share my golden foots? That's a little bit. We'll put the golden foots up. These I'm going to be making
I'm gonna
into,
bounce out, you guys. I wish I could talk about mushrooms. I'm getting really excited about it, but I got some folks here. But
dude,
great
it's
show
the
today.
season. I hope you're picking.
Yeah.
I hope you're picking.
We are, man. We're me and my son are into it. It's like a cool, fun thing that we're learning together, and we
Mine
like
too,
level up
dude.
on it. It's so cool. We're both just like,
Dude, we got to talk about it offline.
yeah, cool, man. All right, have a good night, good afternoon, everyone. Peace.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Josh. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, these are edibles. Chanterelles, yellow foots. They're gonna go into some cream of mushroom soup later today. Mile froze up. Nope, I saw Johnny move, but Etienne still froze.
I'm moving. I'm over here.
I see you. You
My-
guys
my-
are all in
Someone
slow
was
motion.
thinking about my shirt, I think, and it's my friend of mine has this brand. You see him. He's all over Vancouver back in the days, and this is my when I trim, I wear my West Coast Croppers shirt, so it's kind of fun. So,
West Coast Croppers.
West Coast Croppers or Carlton.
Well, dude,
I mean,
thanks
Carlton,
everyone for
Vermont.
coming in today. I appreciate all of you. I think I'm maybe going to go pick more mushrooms today. There's edible mushrooms out there, and they're only going to be going for so long before the season is over. So I implore all of you to go for a hike in the forest, see if you can even just take some pictures of mushrooms and check them out on the Google app with the camera. It can sometimes help identify. Obviously, don't eat anything if you're not practicing mycologist, but definitely check it out. It's worth going into the forest and photographing all these mushrooms. And if you want to become a part of a really great group on Facebook, I'll hit it up here real quick. There's a group called Mushrooms, Wild and Mysterious, and then it says Seminar with Paul Stamets. So I don't know if my phone now, it won't let me with the background. Check out that Facebook group, Mushrooms, Wild and Mysterious Seminar with Paul Stamets. You can photograph mushrooms in and around your place, put them up there, and there's incredible amounts of mycologists. Ideally, if you're going to photograph a mushroom for identification, you photograph under the gills as well as the top and the side, 3 good photos, and to see what substrate it's coming out of. So don't cut the mushroom off like at the top, so you can't see what it's actually coming out of, whether it's wood and rot or life or, all these different things that mushrooms grow out of, grass, etc. Shit, even for that matter. But thank you, Etienne Fontaine and SkunkMan Sam and Johnny B and Mike West. And thanks, Josh and Collin, who was here earlier. And of course, Ian Davidson, who came and gave us the drop on tissue culture. That was pretty tight. I've been wanting him to come on for a long time, so I was appreciating that. And really, thanks, guys, for coming in such a last minute and making a nice conversation happen today. I know that 443 people watching in chat live right now. I think they appreciate the conversation. It was fairly polarized today. May the full melt bless your bowl sooner than later, everybody. And peace out for now.